Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, Say What's Real TV. This review is for Kingdom Business, Season 2, Episode 2, Wanna Be Happy. So we open up the episode at the hospital and Denita is coming out of her coma. So, the family, they gather around, they're excited and happy. And Taj, he decides that he wants to apologize to Calvin for the way he treated him. He asks him for his forgiveness and Calvin tells him, "I'm your father." I guess meaning, of course I forgive you. And they just hug it out. And I'm like, are you his father, Calvin? Are you? So the doctor, he comes out and talks to the family and lets them know that Denita is doing well in her recovery. She's exceeding their expectations. And basically that bullet that was lodged near her spine has shifted, so now they can go ahead and try to do the surgery to have it removed. And he says as far as her brain injury goes, after talking to her and hearing some of her inconsistencies and confusion, he tells them that that can be an effect from her being under sedation, or it's a possibility she has post-traumatic amnesia. And he says over time, it will lessen. And I personally feel like the time has already expired. So as they're sitting around her bed, they're talking about her having this amnesia and how it could be a blessing and how she can keep her mind off of the lawsuit and this and that and the other. Of course, Calvin wants her to have amnesia quiet as it's kept because that would mean he don't have to worry about her thinking about this whole Danny affair and all these affairs and stuff he got going on, right? They mentioned that she was shot and she opens her eyes and she was like, "Oh, I've been shot. Somebody shot me." And they looking at her like, "Oh, you don't remember?" And she says, "I don't remember a thing." We're going to keep our good eye on you, Denita, with this quote unquote amnesia, girl. So we see that 3 weeks has passed and we go over there to Vivid and Rebel, she is back on the pole. Some guy steps to her and he's trying to get her to meet his homeboy, which is some hotshot producer named Xavier James. And Rebel clearly wasn't impressed. She's like, "Have him meet me in a VIP just like everybody else." Dex steps to her and he was like, "Oh, you trying to play hard to get?" So they get to talking and he propositions her to do these private parties and lets her know, look, if you're going to do it, you're going to have to be all in because the people who attend these parties, they don't play the radio. Rebel was like, those are her kind of people, and she was with it. So did anyone else notice how Dex looked at the guys across the room? One guy in particular, I don't know if he was security or he was actually with Xavier and his crew, but he looked at him a little funny. So I don't know, Dex is up to something and I don't know if they're trying to set Rebel up or what. So Rebel, she's in the VIP room getting impatient when Xavier finally makes his way up there, coming in there with all this little sexual energy, talking about what he normally don't do, but he gonna make an exception tonight. So she ends up giving him this little lap dance / singing session. So he wanted to know, was it an audition? She says she don't have to audition. And he was trying to get her to get up, leave the club with him, and she told him no. So I guess he got turned on by that because now he says, "When can I see you again?" And she told him, "At your studio, and then I'll have you begging to sign me to a contract." So over at the hospital, CJ learns that Denita is getting ready to be released and the bullet has been removed. And she's a little concerned about the memory loss, and Malcolm reassures her that just sit and wait, everything will be fine. So Malcolm then jokes about how much nicer it is to be around Denita with this amnesia. So CJ lets him know, look, you're the only one I trust, so you are going to be her in-home nurse since she has to be released so fast. So we see Denita sitting up in her hospital bed giving back like she never left. And she gets several visitors throughout the day. And her first visit we see is Taj. So he comes in and she's like, "Oh, good to see you. You're Taj, right? You're my son." And he's happy because now he's figuring she's starting to remember him. And she says, "Well, good. I'm just checking because you're not the first person to say that." So Taj, he tilts his head to the side like confused, like, So she just chalks it up to having this crazy dream. And she's basically talking about the young man that stood over her bed that said that he was her son. It's already hard to try to remember your dreams as it is, but for her to be coming out of a coma and still have that in her mind that possibly could have happened, is amazing, and I cannot wait till we can get back to that particular part of the storyline. So Taj, he has his guitar with him, and he's gonna sing to her, and hopefully she can join in and see if she can remember some of the words of the song that he's singing. So they sang one particular song, and she's like, oh, I know that song, I wrote that. He had to tell her, no ma'am, no you didn't, that Malcolm wrote that song. And she was like, Malcolm, who, the nurse? And Taj had to tell her, don't even worry about it. We later see Calvin coming to see Denita, and he brings her some food from her favorite lunch spot called South City Kitchen. So they pray over the food. He gives this nice prayer. So he tells Denita that he's been in this residential treatment center that deals with depression. And the reason he went was because Chief Ray had the DA not file charges against him if he went there. So I'm wondering, what exactly were they going to charge Calvin with? Danny's murder or having the gun in the church? Like, what was that about? Calvin tells her his time away at the treatment center gave him time to heal, reflect, and ask for forgiveness. Then he asks her for hers. She tells him that he already has her forgiveness, and she asks him, how are you doing? He tells her that he's better, and he's going to continue going to the psychiatrist. So Denita, she asks him, what about their marriage? Are they good? Calvin says he doesn't know because, before this happened, you asked for a divorce. After 30 years of his nonsense, she had had enough. So then she wanted to know, was she a good wife? He told her she was better than what he deserved, and then he told her the truth. No, you weren't. Denita then brought up her memory loss, but made sure to ask him who was Danny. You can hear a church mouse pissing on cotton after that. Calvin had nothing to say. So then Denita, she gets a visit from CJ, and they start talking about the tour and how it got canceled because of the incident and how they had to refund all the advance sales. So they took a big loss with that. But since her music has been trending since the incident happened, CJ said she came up with the idea of having a major TV special and probably just trying to find the right network that'll promote that. She's already reached out to her friends that are willing to perform and support her in doing that. So Denita, she was pretty much with it, and she was like, just write the proposal up. And CJ was like, oh, you still know how to count commas? Denita was like, I may have forgotten a lot of things, but counting my coins ain't one of them. I said, I know that's right. So later in the episode, we see Sasha go see Denita, and she's like, oh, you're my assistant. You've told me that. I got a strange feeling that you were talking to me when I was out of it, but that couldn't be possible, is it? And at this point, I just feel like Denita is playing in all our face. So Sasha, she tried to have all the sense in the world. She hands Denita a recording contract to Kingdom Records and says, go ahead and sign, try to get this out the way before you go home tomorrow. And Denita was like, I don't remember discussing this with you. So Sasha was like, yeah, it was before the incident. And she was like, you were so excited about signing me. And she was like, okay, well, if you say so. So she pretends she getting ready to sign it, and then tell her she can't legally sign anything because she's already given CJ power of attorney while she's in the state that she's in. Like, bam, boom, get out my face, Sasha. And that right there further lets me know Denita know exactly what the hell she's doing. So when that didn't work with Denita, Sasha, she sashays her tail over there to Caesar, talking about, I know you seen my viral video racking up in the numbers, and Caesar looking like, no, I haven't. She tells him that God told her that she's, should be over there with him. He's looking at her like, you told me that Denita was begging you to be over there at Kingdom. So she tells him she's a better fit at redeeming records, and he peeped game, and he gets up like trying to usher her out the door. Like, do you have anything else I can listen to? And she's all sultry and flirting like, oh, so many things. And Caesar was like, let's just stick to one thing. And she tells him once she gets done that he'll be begging her for more. And Caesar has a look on his face like, girl, if you don't get out my face with all of that. So we go back to Rebel. She goes over there to Xavier's studio, and lo and behold, who pops up? It's Essence, acting all fake and phony, acting like she's shocked that Rebel is there, when I feel like she set the whole thing up to begin with so that Rebel can get out of Taj's face. So Essence is telling Xavier to go ahead and sign Rebel because she's just that good. And he was like, hold on. I got to wait to see if she got what it takes first. And she's trying to set up some little double date. And he was like, hold your horses. And what are you doing here anyway? Because in the 10 years we've been homies, probably home and lover friends, that she has never been early. But just so happened today when Rebel's there, she shows up ahead of time. So Xavier, he basically kicks Essence out and she tells Rebel, I'll see you on Friday for that double date. So he told Rebel, you ready to sing? So she get to singing some little teeny bopper sounding song. He wasn't impressed. I wasn't impressed. And he says that's not really what his label was looking for, the little sound she was giving him. So she was getting ready to leave and I thought she felt like, oh, let me really bring it. So she gives him a different song with a little more oomph to it. And I guess that did the trick for Xavier. So he told her, look, my record label is no joke. You got to be all in. Are you good with that? And she agreed to that, but then told him, technically, she's still signed to Redeeming Records with Caesar. So soon after, we see Xavier and Rebel go to Redeeming Records. So Xavier, he gets in there, he's straight out. Oh, I want to buy out her contract. He ain't say, hey, cat, dog, nothing. Hello, how you doing? None of that. No home training, just none. And Caesar like, well, how you doing? He talking about, oh, I was being direct. And Caesar was like, well, let me be direct. It's not for sale. So Rebel, she yells out, oh, you said I could buy it for $100,000. So Xavier thought that was the funniest thing ever. He just bust in the gut talking about, look, my chain costs more than that. I'll give you $125,000 and we'll call it a day. So Caesar, he asks Xavier, can he speak with Rebel alone? And the two of them get into that same conversation they have. Rebel's still dealing with, wanting to sing what she wants to sing without having to explain her life and this and that. And Caesar's still saying that it's going to take some time. She doesn't have the time. She needs money. She just wants to be let go. Caesar tells her, fine, if this is what you want, but you still have to fulfill your contractual obligations with Redeeming Records first, which for one would be for you to complete your album. And also let her know that he can't stop her from working with Xavier, but Xavier cannot release any music that he does with Rebel until she's done with him. So I guess Rebel was okay with that, and he said that he needed a favor from her. The next thing you know, we see the two of them in the hospital, and Denita just happened to be in the hallway during her walking therapy. Denita, she sees Caesar, and they're going back and forth, introducing themselves, and she's acting like she really don't remember him, talking about his name is Strong, and he's like, oh, I'm in the record industry just like you are. And he says that he brought Rebel there to see her, which he didn't say why, because if she's signed to you, why are you bringing her to her? It made no sense. But it just let me know that Caesar was trying to see for himself by using Rebel if Denita was lying about her amnesia. So when she sees Rebel, she's like, oh, this must be your daughter. And I was like to myself, that's foreshadowing, because that's how Caesar acts, like Rebel is his daughter, like for real, for real. But then she starts laying it on thick, telling Rebel just how beautiful she was, just going on and on about that. And then she told her that she hoped that she was using her gift for the Lord, and said she had to get back to her therapy. So when she walks off, Rebel was like, she really doesn't remember. And Caesar was like, so it seems. But Caesar still was giving the side eye. So let's talk about Darlene and how she done ran through the entire episode, basically controlling everybody and telling them what she want them to do. So we see her and Taj having a conversation, and she's telling Taj that, since his daddy done went and messed up everything at the church, that he can help restore everything by getting married now. And Taj was like, marriage? Like, what they got to do with anything? She told him, the saints will not approve of you having a baby out of wedlock. So Taj trying to play it off and act crazy like he don't know what's going on. He says, baby? Who said anything about a baby? Darlene said, respect your grandmother. I was born that night, not last night. She didn't say that, but that's just what I said. She said, I knew it the minute I laid eyes on that girl. When is her due date? So he had to come clean and admit that she was in her first trimester. Darlene was like, I was just waiting for you to share the good news. And he said they was trying to keep it on the low. She said, well, we will not make any announcements until after the marriage. So basically, Darlene is forcing Taj to marry Essence. And it seems to be just duplicating the same situation Denita, Calvin, and Caesar went through back in the day when they were younger, because we know that Taj's heart is really with Rebel. So when we see Darlene again, she's at the house, Denita is out of the hospital, and they're at the table having breakfast. Both ladies were looking really, really nice. So Darlene, she was telling her how slow the church has been, how they're barely getting anyone in the pews. The offerings are not enough to keep the lights on, how they're using guest pastors, and saying that they really need to come up with something big so they can try to get people back in the church. So Denita suggested, since she is who she is, that she comes back to the church so she can help put people back in the pews. So Darlene tells her there's been some unanswered questions about her recovery, but one thing's for sure, Denita's ego is still there, it's still intact. So Darlene talked to her about having too much pride and had to let her know that, again, that her and Calvin no longer have a role or a function in the church, and she need to be worried about getting better and that record label. And told her that was just the courtesy they were extending, and don't try them. I said, this Darlene is a hot mess. So then Darlene decides she's going to catch CJ before she leaves the house, and CJ comes down the steps with this nice green pantsuit on. I love the green. So she sits her down and lets her know, like, her and her husband Jeremiah, they're making changes in the church, which we already knew, controlling the whole situation, that she wanted her to preach on Sunday. Darlene says all PK kids have at least one good sermon up in them. So CJ was looking at her like, I'm not auditioning for this, right? Am I? Because my love is for music. And she says she has to process this, like she has to find her replacement for the minister of music. And Darlene tells her, look, I already have that under control. It's going to be Malcolm, your husband. And she's grinning and bearing it and like, okay, I got to talk to my husband. We're going to pray about it. And Darlene basically was given, as you should, pray and talk all you want to, but she knows what God has said to her, and he's never wrong, and neither is she. Basically letting CJ know she said what she said. And apparently Darlene got what she wanted, because when Sunday got here, she was at the podium in the church introducing Sierra Joy Jordan, which is CJ, to come up to give her word and her anointings. CJ sitting there nervous, got to pray about it like, you got this, girl, you got this. So she gets up to the podium, and it was giving Grace from Greenleaf. She's getting ready to get into the sermon when her mom walks in. She's looking sharp as a tack in her red and yellow, a little bright, but hey, she was looking sharp nonetheless. Darlene was looking like she saw a ghost. CJ seemed like she got a little nervous. And Denita, she just sat down in the pews. You know, Darlene got up and had the church acknowledge that she was in there. And that's when CJ offered her to come up to say a few words. And Denita was like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to interrupt. So CJ insisted. So then Denita got up, went and said a few words, acknowledged her daughter. And then she went and sat next to Darlene, which gave her this evil eye, like if looks could kill, she would be back in that hospital where she was at, and told her, we'll talk. Basically tried to say, look, I told you not to bring your behind down here, and you came anyway. So we go over there to the studio with Taj, and he's over there playing music, and Essence comes in, they get to talking, and she notices that he has something on his mind, and he starts telling her that he thinks that they should get married because of the child. Essence disagreed with him, saying that they don't need to be married to be a family. Taj says he wants his family to be together, and he's looking for more of a traditional family. Essence wants to know where's all this coming from, your dysfunctional parents or your dysfunctional grandparents, because she doesn't hear a lot of love coming from Taj. She tells him she's not opposed to them getting married. She just wants it to be genuine and come from his heart. And Essence already knows that Rebel has Taj's heart. So she already knows this. And in addition to all of that, if you're going to do it, at least be romantic about it, coming with that old bland, non-seasoned proposal. So then we see the night of the double date with Taj, Essence, Rebel, and Xavier. So as Rebel and Xavier are walking up towards the table, she's telling him don't mention that she's a stripper. And he's like, well, she wouldn't care. And she said, well, others may. And I'm like, I thought everybody already knew that she was a stripper. I was confused by that. So they sit down, and Taj wanted to know that Essence set that up. And she was like, I wish. And she was like congratulating her from getting signed by Xavier. And, she's laying it on thick like, oh, they the perfect couple, blah, blah, blah. And Taj is like, oh, y'all working together? Like, what does Caesar have to say about that? And Rebel told him, he said, I was good long as I fulfilled my commitment. And he tells Xavier he was a lucky man. So you could tell Taj felt some kind of way and was in his feelings. So he tried to play it off by grabbing Essence's hand and kissing it all lovingly. And then he looks over at Rebel as if to say, take that. And she gives him this look back like, whatever. Because she already know the truth, child. So I guess we get a scene the next day with Rebel and Essence doing a demo together. And Essence was saying to her that she wanted to see if her and Rebel had the same type of connection that Rebel and Taj had at Faith Night. And I'm like, girl, you're not slick. But the song was cute and stuff. So we get a scene with Taj talking to his big sister, CJ. And she's just going over with him about him proposing to Essence and basically asking him, is this something that he really wants to do from the bottom of his heart? Like, make sure it's his decision, and no one else's. And he's saying like he just really wants to marry the mother of his child. He wants to be in his child's life, tuck them in bed, take them to school, all of that. And CJ says, well, I know you'll be a great father. What about a loving husband to your wife? So he tells her he's going to go all in and pray that his heart follows, confirming he does not love Essence. We then get the scene where Taj and Essence, they're in a restaurant. He gets up and gets his guitar and he starts singing If I Could to her. I thought the song was nice. The words were good. As he was singing, a lot of the gentlemen that were sitting around them gave Essence a rose. It seemed like the entire restaurant was in on it. He had the servers get in a single file line. As he was singing, they each handed her a rose one by one. Then they all joined in with him singing the song. I thought it was absolutely amazing. And if it was someone he really, really, truly was in love with, i.e. maybe Rebel, it would have been like 10 times that. I still thought it was beautiful. I still teared up because I thought it was romantic as well. And of course, he proposed and she said yes. So we go over there to the church and Calvin is there and he gets a visit from Danny's parents. And of course, they're upset as they should be. So they give him a piece of their mind and her mother, she ends up slapping him and they're like, you lied to us. You preached at her eulogy. You told us you didn't even know her. So the dad wanted to know that he hired a drug dealer that shot her. And Calvin was like, no, he didn't. So they still calling him a liar. They don't believe anything he has to say. Calvin said he would find out who was responsible for Danny's death. And the dad said he wanted names because he wanted to make them pay. Calvin said he'll handle everything because enough people have died already. And the dad told him, you're a bishop, for God's sakes, start acting like one. So while in the church, Calvin talks to Deacon Dwayne, which I still feel nobody can see him except Denita and Calvin. So Dwayne, he gives his usual spiritual advice and guidance and lets him know that sometimes God requires more than one person to repent for the sins of many, and says that he's been called to be the light. So I guess that's his confirmation to go ahead and try to solve what happened to Danny. So we go to one of these private parties and we see Rebel. She's actually in there working. And then here comes Calvin walking like the building on fire. And one of the girls said, we missed you, Bishop. He was like, I'm not here for that. So he's telling people to turn off the music and unplug and stuff. So Calvin said he will be heard. He wasn't leaving there till he was getting some answers. So he starts speaking his speech and telling them they needed to repent, calling out people's names. He said that somebody in this room knows what happened to Danny and, trying to tell the girls that it wasn't safe for them to be involved with these parties, blah, blah, blah. Dex was trying to get him to be quiet. He ended up beating his behind, head-butting him, all of that, ended up putting a knife to his throat. And that's when Rebel came up to tell him to stop. And one of the other guys finally stepped up and said, Calvin was right. And then Dex basically threw him and Calvin out and told them to go on about their business. Calvin looked at Rebel as she stand there shocked and told her, "You're better than this." And the episode ended there. Ooh, child. So that was episode 2, Wanna Be Happy. What did you guys think of this episode? Drop down in the comments. Let's talk about it. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.